We good to start? Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the January 20th, 2022 meeting of the Institutional Risk and Compliance Committee for the University of Rhode Island Board of Trustees. For this meeting, the committee is holding a hybrid meeting this afternoon in accordance with Governor McKee's Executive Order 22-01. Some committees are present physically and some are participating remotely. Public access to the meeting is available via YouTube, the YouTube video platform. And at this time, I'll conduct a roll call attendance to determine if a quorum is present. Please clearly respond present when your name is called. Karina Edmonds?
Present.
Richard Humphrey? Neil Kerwin?
Present.
Tom Ryan? Christopher Beauvais? Tim Del Judas?
Present.
Margot Cook?
Present.
Mike McNally? Mark Parlange? Is that, do we have 6 present? I believe we have a quorum. I'll call the meeting to order. First order of business is acceptance of the agenda. May I have a motion that the Institutional Risk and Compliance Committee of the University of Rhode Island Board of Trustees accept the agenda for the meeting of January 20th, 2022?
So moved.
Is there a second
Second.
to the motion? Any discussion on the motion? I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. The next item on the agenda is item 2, approval of the minutes. May I have a motion that the Institutional Risk and Compliance Committee of the University of Rhode Island Board of Trustees approve the minutes of November 4th, 2021 joint meeting of the Finance and Facilities Committee and the Institutional Risk and Compliance Committee?
I motioned. So.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? There being no discussion, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. The next item on the agenda is a discussion item. So the first discussion item is 3A. It's a compliance calendar, review of the university's annual compliance reporting obligations and their timing, enclosure 3A. I'll ask Carol Larson to present this discussion item.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here today. I won't take up too much of your time this afternoon. I'm going to just give you a brief update on our compliance calendar and reporting tracking. Bring you up to date a little bit since last year when we had to do the first version of the calendar. We have filled the position of a Director of Enterprise Compliance. Lindsay Nottage started in her position in November. And since that time, she has been working on updating this calendar, making sure that we're finding all of our reporting obligations and accurately charting them. So we are presenting here today the current version of the calendar, and it is in basically chronological order by reporting date of when we submit the reports. It includes the report name, who we send the report to, including this body, the Board of Trustees, gets some of the reports. The reporting period, in other words, timing in which we are required to report, whether it's annual. The regulation or statute that requires it, a brief description, and then the responsible office, so that you can see on the chart, in a nutshell, everything that we do on an annual basis to report make obligatory reports to different agency bodies. We've also added, and the last page, we've added something new this year. We're also starting to track annual certifications or registrations that we do. These aren't reporting obligations, but sometimes they involve a self-assessment that the university must make in order to do the registration or certification to a body. So we've decided to also track those, and that is the final page, and we've got a variety of those in there. So that's really all I have to offer on this, unless people have specific questions.
Thank you, Kara.
I'm sorry, Robbie, let me just ask, so there's no exception that you're being requested at this time to change the current calendar on any compliance issues?
No, I mean, we are meeting all of our compliance obligations, and we're just updating this body, this committee, as to the variety and breadth and scope of reporting obligations that the university undertakes.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Kara.
Thank you.
The next discussion item is item 3B, Annual Clary Report on Crime. Chief Jagoda, will you present?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank the board for inviting me here and discuss this matter, the Clary Report. For those that don't know me, my name is Mike Jagoda. I was newly appointed the Director of Public Safety, Chief of Police in June, late June. And I just want you to know that if you have any questions after this presentation or down in the future, not only related to Clary, but any kind of public safety or police operations, my door is always open to you, and please do not hesitate to give me a call. The Clary Report, for those that don't know, it's really a collaboration of public safety, working with internal and external stakeholders. Really, the two people that put this together is our outreach coordinator, Christiana Malinsky, and our lieutenant, who was just actually appointed as Deputy Police Chief Paul Ritchie. And they gather all the statistical information that we have. So what is the Clary Report? The Clary Report it's an annual report that we are required through federal law. It's named after Jenny Clary, who was raped and murdered in a resident hall back in Lehigh University in 1986. And all higher educational institutions that receive federal funding, some type of federal funding, must report their crime statistics. And we have to report that by October 1st of the following year. So the Clary Report that you have in front of you right now is actually the 2020 statistical information from that calendar year. It also requires certain crimes, and we'll talk a little bit about those Clary crimes. And I think you have a link to the Clary Report, if I'm not mistaken. So there's actually Clary crimes that we're required to report yearly. And we also, in that Clary Report, the two prior years of statistical information. If you look at page 74 and 75 on the Clary Report, it will give you definitions of those Clary reportable crimes. There's a lot of talk about geography. What do we have to report? Is it just what happens on campus? It's changes, but I can tell you right now what it is. It includes all buildings in public areas within the campus, and also adjacent roadways and sidewalks. So for the Kingston campus, that would be Route 138. In our Providence campus, it would also be something like a sidewalk or an adjacent road in one of those city urban areas. So that's why it's very important that if Providence Police Department has a robbery, that we work with them in terms of getting that information so we can report it so we're in compliance. It also includes non-campus buildings owned and controlled by the institution. And that, an example of that would be our sailing facility in Wakefield and our research building in Liberty Lane. And also we have a lot of satellite campuses. So it would include those satellite campuses, not only the main campus, but our satellite campuses in West Greenwich, 2 in Providence, 1 in Narragansett, and of course our research vessel, the Endeavor. Sorry, I missed that slide. Sorry about that. So here are your, so the Clary Report's really broken down to 5 different sections. And these are your Clary reportable crimes. Again, those definitions are on page 74 and 75. And this is the first section of that Clary report. The next section includes the Violence Against Women Act. And these specific reportable crimes that also relate to sexual assault. And that would be in the next section. If you open to that, I believe that's page 77. The next section would be arrest. So these would be criminal type of arrest for these categories, for weapons charges, for drugs, and for alcohol. We also have a component in the next section of referring those incidents, if they're not serious, to student conduct, to the Dean of Students' office. And again, it fits those 3 categories of weapons violations, drugs, and alcohol. And if you're on page 77, you can follow that right down. The next section would be hate crimes. So the hate crimes, there's not only does it include all the Clary reportable crimes, but also includes larceny, intimidation, simple assault, and vandalism. So hate crimes is something that we take very seriously on this campus, and we're working with it's really any crime that's motivated by bias and bigotry. And what I just named back in June when I was appointed chief, a new civil rights hate crimes officer. And we receive extensive training working with the AG's office, the Attorney General's office here in Rhode Island, who are very, very progressive with hate crimes. And they actually have their own unit, civil rights unit. And we work in conjunction with them when we identify any kind of vandalism or what it might be suspected as hate crimes. And we work in terms of that. The data that we had for last year showed that we had 2 on campus. One of them was in a resident hall. And so out of those 3 incidents, 2 of them had to do with sexual orientation, and the other one was related with religion. So who reports this crime? You know, when we put this, our Clary report together, it's really a collaboration and a partnership with not only our internal stakeholders, but also with our external stakeholders. So our campus security authorities, they are officials within the university who have significant responsibility. I'm sorry, I can't see that. For student and campus activity. If you look on page 9 of the Clary report, it identifies all the university CSAs. And I talked a little bit about external stakeholders. That includes, I mentioned the satellite campuses that we have, and we have to get that crime data from them, make sure it's accurate. And we work with our local police departments and our police chiefs within those jurisdictions, not only here in South Kingstown, but also we have 2 campuses in Providence, Narragansett, and West Greenwich, along with the Rhode Island State Police. So I just want to talk a little bit, we went through those 5 sections, a little bit about what we're seeing in the last year's crime, the Clary data, the crime statistics. What we had was on those Clary reportable crimes, those offenses, we saw 3 burglaries, 4 total, and 3 that happened in our resident halls. And the state statute is a little bit different. The Rhode Island state statute is a little bit different from what the Clary definition is. Maybe, again, if you look on page 77, these are crime statistics related to our VAWA, our Violence Against Women Act. And we saw no domestic violence, but we saw dating violence. We had 2 of those dating violence and 1 stalking on the resident halls. And then total on campus would be the 2 and 1 also. And we really work with student affairs in these types of incidents. And we also work with the victims and helping them with protective orders through the court, temporary restraining orders, and also with no trespass orders. We talked a little bit earlier about the 2 parts of the weapons, drugs, and alcohol. The first part of this is the arrest, which is the criminal ones where we end up sending them to court. And there we saw weapons. We saw 1 weapon. And I believe, I'll have to do my research on that. I believe that ended up being a knife. And then down on the referrals, we had 2 incidents where it was tasers, and we referred them to student conduct. And then you can see all our referrals that on the bottom that get sent to student conduct. So I think the other part that within our Clary report that is unique is that we also include just not our data and our crime stats, but also other important information, other resources that we can help our victims, along with training and educational information. And here are some of those policies and resources regarding it, from Title IX to all the way from our VPAS to our missing student policy. The other part of the Clary report is at the very end of it, and you'll see that on page 86 and 87, we also are required to report our fire safety report. And it includes, there's a couple different parts of that. One is what are we doing for educational and drills? So it identifies our fire drills that we're doing, our evacuation procedures. And this is where within public safety, our fire and life safety, along with our outreach coordinator, our community policing outreach coordinator, works with HRL and our residents, our RAs, to help facilitate these. And that also, again, includes 3 years of statistical information. And it also identifies fire safety systems that are contained within those facilities. And as you can see, last year, we only had 2 incidents of that at the University Gateway Apartments and the University Graduate Village. And those were both unintentional incidents where they were related to stove. And I believe the one at the University Gateway was a kitchen, a trash in the kitchen. And then lastly, our fraternity, we had no incidents in terms of that. Again, that data is on page 91, 92. So I can tell you in my short time as the director and the chief of police, looking at our Clary report, looking at our UCR, our data that we report to the Rhode Island State Police and the FBI, this is an extremely safe campus to learn, to work, and to live in, and also to visit. I'll entertain any questions.
Thanks for the report. It's good to hear that you feel it's a safe environment. But so given that you're relatively new in the role, can you give us a sense of some things that maybe were surprising to you, or some things that you're thinking about you might be changing in the future?
for related to crime patterns or related to,
I would say generally,
Yeah.
given your perspective.
well, I would say that, I got to look at both Presidents Dooley and President Palage. Our goals and our values of this university are very important to the way our community members treat each other. And so we're not seeing what a lot of other communities are seeing. But I can tell you what we have to be aware of, and which for me is exciting, is we are a global university now. We are really on the map globally as a research institution. We have a lot of dignitaries that come here now. I was a student here. I'm a URI alum, and I was a student here. And this university's progressed extremely over the last few years that I've been here. So those kind of challenges that we're going to see while we're going to be globally known throughout, I think is challenging in terms of being prepared, risk mitigation for those kind of things. Did that?
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Robbie. I had a question. Thank you for the report. Just, along Margot's line of questioning as well. I don't know how our numbers fare relative to other campuses in the area. So wondered, can you hear me? Yeah.
I can, yes.
Yeah.
Our statistical information over, I've examined it over the last 3 years, and for our university, it's been pretty consistent. We haven't seen any kind of spikes or anything that's alarming. And I do talk to, as a matter of fact, earlier this morning, I got to talk to my public safety partners in the other universities and colleges in Rhode Island. And again, we're pretty consistent with their Clary reports and their crime data. And we're a little bit unique in this university, in this state, because us and Brown, we do have Rick and CCRI, but for us and Brown, the police department is really active in terms of investigations, working with student conduct in the student's office, where there's a lot of different Title IX, a lot of referrals to student conduct there, and it gets outsourced to the local police department there.
Great, thank you. And then just a quick follow-up. I mean, I have noticed the increase in crime, and it's all over the news in so many cities. And since obviously you work closely with the Rhode Island Police in Providence, are you seeing a spike in crime as well? I mean, just outside of the university?
Outside the university, we're seeing, it depends what category of crime. In terms of violent crime, we're seeing that it's down. But we're seeing some petty larceny crimes, larcenies. We see them as crimes of opportunity. So, we are an open campus here at Kingston and even some of our satellite campuses. So we're aware of that. And our officers, I think what's neat about our opportunity here is our police officers buy into the community policing philosophy. And it's really about a partnership with our students, with our faculty, and with our staff. And we really work together to solve problems, to address issues and concerns. So I think that's very important, that community policing philosophy in terms of being transparent, building that trust and legitimacy on the police side is very important. And I think we've done a good job with that. There's still much work to do. So, that's why we like, where we see, in my experience coming from the Connecticut State Police, once you build that trust and legitimacy, you can kind of rest on that. Our population, our community members are changing every year. So we got to work extremely hard to build that.
Great, thank you. Great.
More questions for Chief Jagoda? Chief, I know we had an opportunity to discuss some of these topics. It's a pleasure to chat with you again, and the university is very fortunate to have you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robbie.
The next discussion item is cybersecurity risk treatment update. We'll have Mike Calfane report. Mike, did I get it right this time?
Yes, you did. Spot on.
All right.
Robbie, I always tell everybody, you know, my last name is it's like an eye chart. When you look at it. Okay. Okay. Great. Can everybody see my screen? Full screen? Okay. Thank you, Robbie, and thank you everyone for having me here today. My name is Mike Calfane. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer here at the university. Today I'll be covering the following items. URI's information security strategy, our current risk landscape, our strategic approach to how we manage our risk, how we will achieve these goals, how will we connect our tactics to the strategy, and a overview of our 2021 National Cybersecurity Review results that we just completed this year in partnership with the MSISAC and Department of Homeland Security. So, our information security strategy, right? So right now, taking a look at this slide, we can say we will do these things to help the university address these risks so we can achieve our goals while limiting risk exposure to within our risk appetites, right? Who we are, I think everybody here knows this. We're a diverse, dynamic community whose members are connected by common quest for knowledge as a major research university defined by innovation and big thinking. We offer undergraduate, graduate, professional students distinctive educational opportunities designed to meet the global challenges of today's world and the rapidly evolving needs of tomorrow. Right? And our goals: enhance student success, expand research, scholarship, and creative work, grow a global presence, embrace diversity and social justice, streamline processes to improve effectiveness. Now, moving on to the risks we face. Here I have a selected number of risks. By all means, this is not a full inclusive list, but this is what was chosen for this presentation. Now, if we don't manage these risks, we have a problem. And our strategy is, how are we going to address them? And we're going to address them based off of these 6 principles. Implement proactive risk management, protect university information, improve resilience and recoverability, deploy robust crisis and incident management, establish governance, and enhance security operations. Moving on to our risk landscape expanded, right? We know all of these risks are bad, and this slide is going to show you why they're bad for our university, why they will impact our business, and why they will cause problems for us, right? So the ability to achieve all of the goals that I had mentioned will be negatively impacted by reputational risk. If we fail to account for reputational risk, the university will lose customer confidence, suffer long-term impact due to perceived negativity about our brand, which we have worked very hard to create and protect. Loss of intellectual property. If we don't protect our critical internal data, we run the risk of losing grant funding, leading to a decline in recruiting prominent researchers, not to mention the large number of grants that our researchers bring in. Regulatory compliance. If we fail to maintain compliance, we'll be subject to fines, negative public perception, drop in student enrollment, increased cost of compliance moving forward if we don't comply with the regulations we need to comply with. Emerging technology risk. We ignore risk due to emerging technology that's not understood nor managed. This will keep us from increasing student enrollment, cause us to lose next-gen students that pretty much expect support of new technology when they come onto campus, and slow down the university or allow unknown risks to proliferate throughout the university's network. Lack of resiliency in critical systems. If we don't pay attention to resiliency, we'll be unable to recover in case of outages, whether they're systemic, regional, or isolated to the university, resulting in lost revenue, downtime, lost customers. And as I mentioned, these outages could be internal, external, accidental, or malicious, as we all know we have experienced at one time or another. Moving on, our strategic approach to managing our risks, right? So our mission of the IT Security Services Office is to assure the security of the university's IT resources and the existence of a safe computing environment which the university can teach, learn, and conduct research. As mentioned, you see on the left-hand side, these are the risks. In the middle, these are the principles that the program is based off of. And on the right, you'll see objectives. And essentially, these are restatements of layperson's terms of the 5 domains of the NIST cybersecurity framework. Objective number 1, identify, know what we have, what's important, and what we are doing. 2, protect, implement efficient and effective measures to protect ourselves. 3, detect, catch the things we didn't stop in an appropriate time frame. 4, respond, prioritize and react to incidents. 5, recover, return to a good state of operations as soon as feasible and reasonable. How are we going to achieve these goals? In order to achieve the program vision, mission, principles, and objectives, we've selected a widely adopted framework that I just mentioned that allow us to build a set of processes to identify, assess, and treat the risks that we have. And as I've mentioned, this is based off of the NIST cybersecurity framework with the identify domain, protect domain, detect domain, respond, and recover. A little more information on these is forthcoming into the next slide. Connecting the tactics to our strategy, right? In order to leverage the framework, we must implement these processes that'll help us build scalable, repeatable patterns of behaviors and actions to improve our security and risk management program over time. On the left here are the primary 5 domains of our program. And to the right are the subdomains that fall under each one of these primary domains. So for identify, know what we have, what we do, and what's important. That falls under asset management, right? We need to know what assets we have, where they are, in terms of both hardware and software, business environment governance, right? If we don't know where the data is and what type of data it is based on criticality, then how are we supposed to protect it? Our risk assessment and risk management strategy as well. Protect, stop the things we should, implement basic blocking and tackling. Underneath protect, we have identity management and user accounts, awareness and training, data security, information protection, maintenance, and protective technologies. Detect, quickly, simply, efficiently find the things we cannot stop. And that has to do with having IDSs, IPSs in place on the campus network, which we do, going through the anomalies and events, improving upon detection processes, and security continuous monitoring. Respond, implement processes to filter real events in real time, prioritize, and treat. So response planning, incident response plan, analysis, mitigation improvements, right? Best practices, how to improve upon the previous incident, as well as communications. Recover, return to a known good state, learn and strive for continuous improvement. That involves recovery planning, improvements, and communications. Before I get into the next section of the presentation, I'll pause here and see if anybody has any questions so far.
Yeah, this is Tom Ryan. I have a question. Where are we on the awareness and training of all the university employees vis-a-vis this discussion?
So in lieu of deploying security awareness training in one shot to everyone, we are hitting all the various departments one at a time in terms of the training. And the training is targeted toward those specific departments, Tom. So Controller's Office will receive training that's related to PCI and how to handle financial information, understanding about compliance, GLBA, et cetera. Same with health services. They have focused training on HIPAA as well as basic security hygiene. At this time, we do not have training for our students, but we do have training for all of our faculty and staff. And in addition to that, we participate in the annual cybersecurity training month every year. And we have a program that has received some good support over the past 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Michael, I had a quick follow-up. It's Neil. Is the training for faculty and staff mandatory?
Right now, it is not.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Should it be?
I believe it should.
And
We are, and sorry to interrupt, I just want to add one more thing. We're currently working with HR to make new employees, making that part of the onboarding training when they arrive at the university.
In the private sector, there was, if training, completion of training was tied to certain benefits, and you would not get annual reviews, compensation reviews, if the training wasn't done and completed. You know, it's either important or it's not, right?
Right.
The worst situation is we say we're training and then we don't. That gets us, if something does happen down the road, it puts us in an even worse position. So.
Agreed. And we have the training for all faculty and staff. Previously, we tried to have that, come from the top, and we really weren't successful. So that's why we had to go to Plan B and try to hit as many areas as possible without having that in place.
In most organizations, security training is also tied to your actual account privileges to get onto the network.
Right.
That's pretty common nowadays.
And just to follow up, Michael, on Robbie's point and Tom's, what would you say is the major obstacle right now to making it mandatory? Is there one, or is it simply a matter of making it a priority?
If I could respond for a sec, just for, at the moment, it's being done pretty much at the division level. And so, for example, administration and finance did complete mandatory IT security training. And I think student affairs did, although I can't really speak for Kathy. So at the moment, it seems to be happening at the division level rather than as a university-wide mandate.
Right, that was happening by department, right? That was the.
Well, division, we're a little bigger than department.
But it's mandatory.
Yeah, in my division, it's mandatory.
But someone else's division may not be.
May not be.
Correct.
That doesn't seem right. I don't know if we have to solve it here, but it seems like something we should discuss maybe in the board meeting.
Yeah, so if I can, so this is part of, there's a lot of education and training that one needs. And I agree with your earlier point, Tom, that I have been at previous schools, universities, where it's usually tied to actually getting pay. So and you're usually given a date. So if we have it, and I think we have to actually, it's not just this training around this particular security issue, but there's other training that is important, and it's important to be updated. So I actually agree with the sentiment here, and I think it's something that we are in the process of talking about, or just thinking about how we might, this is obviously related to human resources and also, just general education within the.
So maybe we could, Robbie, just for this committee and this topic, maybe we could revisit this at the next meeting and see where we are with regard to more consistent training practices. And Mark, maybe you can come back to the board as you're thinking about it across general topics.
Yeah.
Right. In addition to that, one more point. We try to be proactive. So just recently we had a phishing campaign, and we were able to identify through our email protection system which users clicked on it. We compiled the list and we sent out an email to all of those with a video module on how to detect phishing incidents.
I have just a quick question. How is the training delivered? Is it online, and how long is it currently?
Yes, it is online. It is, I want to say 20 to 25 minutes, and it does not need to be taken all at once. The system will remember where you left off, and you can pick up from wherever you are.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Any correlation that hi, it's Margot Cook. Have you noticed any correlation between, and I don't know if this, track this, where there hasn't been training and there have been instances to respond to?
Yes. And also where there has been training already and we already had to respond to an incident. So making it, I think, mandatory at least annually would be a good idea, because there are new topics that can get created every year, because we don't want everybody spending a half hour to an hour having to do this training. We try to put it down to about 20 minutes or so with different topics.
I mean, I will tell you from a corporate standpoint, it's actually much heavier than that when it comes to this, and it's quarterly.
Yep, I tried to do that, but
Yeah.
told it was a little too long, and then the union started getting involved, and how do I use this time, so on and so forth. So.
All right. Well, maybe the board can help you with that.
Outstanding. Any other questions?
Do we
Okay.
periodically, this is Tom, do we periodically bring in someone from the outside to kind of pressure test our systems, to try to get in and hack it, beat it, work it over, see what they can exploit? Have we done that, or will we?
Right. No, we're planning on doing that, and that would be part of pen testing from the outside. That has not been done to this point yet. However, through our trusted third parties, there are services that monitor and try to scan our network remotely versus trying to hack in, and provide us with reporting on to what vulnerabilities that we may have that are externally exposed.
Thank you.
Michael,
You're
on
welcome.
the recovery side, do we conduct any sort of annual disaster recovery testing? I mean, continuity of operations perspective?
At this point, I want to say for some services, but so I used to work in Hasbro, a toy company, right? And that security awareness training involved, I'm sorry, that disaster recovery planning involved, Thursday through Sunday, working day and night to bring up the system at a remote location and try to log in. No, we're not doing any of that right now. However, in some areas, we do test our backups and recovery and failover of our networks. But in terms of true DR, BCP, no.
Okay, all right, thank you.
It is currently being worked on, but at this time, there is no formal plan. Okay, so moving on. the 2021 NCSR that I mentioned at the beginning. This past year, URI participated in MSISAC's nationwide cybersecurity review. The no-cost confidential annual self-assessment that's based on the NIST cybersecurity framework we decided to adopt, sponsored by DHS and the MSISAC. They evaluate cybersecurity maturity across the nation while providing actionable feedback. Sorry, I go to the next slide. My apologies. Here we go. Providing actionable feedback and metrics directly to individual respondents in state, local, tribal, and territory governments. Using the results of the NCSR, DHS delivers this biennial anonymous summary report to Congress, providing a broad picture of the cybersecurity maturity across the SLTT community. Great tool. It allows us to receive metrics specific to our organization, develop a benchmark to gauge our year-to-year progress, and anonymously measure our results against our peers. Other universities participate in this as well. The NCSR utilizes a maturity scale that assesses how an organization is addressing the different activities within the NIST cybersecurity framework. The scale allows participants to indicate how formalized these activities are within their organization. In order to provide a target for the SLTT community, a team of cybersecurity professionals developed a recommended minimum maturity level as a common baseline for everyone. The maturity level uses implementation and process as the recommended minimum maturity level. As you'll see in the next slide, there's a full breakdown of the NCSR maturity levels, response scale, along with the scores associated with each maturity level. So for each of these questions, we had to go through and select from 1, not performed, all the way up to 7, optimized, meaning 1, you're not doing anything to achieve the reference objective, to being optimized, you're doing everything. You're testing, you're verifying, you're reviewing regularly to ensure continued effectiveness. Now, the next slide is going to show where we are today. The red line you see up here is the minimum maturity level. And these are our actual scores for each of these domains that we have here: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Right, so we have, we have some strengths from this. As you can see here, these are some of our strengths that I pulled. Physical access to assets is managed and protected. Users are informed and trained. Right, and going back to Tom, what he said, the fact that, we're saying this, we need to make sure that that happens. But in terms of this assessment, where it's asking, we are training users when we have a program. Physical and information security personnel understand their roles and responsibility. The data at rest is protected, at least within ITS and in our cloud environments. Data in transit is also protected. We have protections in place to assist with the prevention of data leaks. Impact of events that we receive on a regular basis are determined. Notification from our detection systems are investigated, and the impact of these incidents is understood, and forensics are performed. Where we need some improvement, there are a number of areas. This is by no means everything for both where we did well and areas of improvement. There'd be way too many to list, but physical devices and systems within the organizations are inventoried. We need to improve upon that. Resources are prioritized based on their classification, like I mentioned earlier, criticality and business value. Resilience requirements that support the delivery of critical services are established for all operating states. Governance and risk management processes address cybersecurity risk. The university's risk tolerance is determined and clearly expressed. That is something we need to, I believe, discuss and establish. Asset management, again, throughout the removal, transfers, and disposition of assets. baseline configuration of IT, industrial control systems is created and maintained, incorporating best practice security. And I'll take any questions if anybody has anything.
I'm curious, as the CISO, what your escalation process is. If something comes across your desk, how does it go up the chain?
It depends on the incident and the severity of it, but for the most part, I communicate directly with Carlos after my team is debriefed, and we come up with a plan on how to remediate it, address it, and bring in who's involved. And again, this is all based on the severity of the incident.
It's tough to solve all those areas of improvement. How do you prioritize those? Like, what are the top three?
So originally, we'd like to try to tackle the low-hanging fruit first, and having the policies recently approved goes a long way in allowing us to do our job because we have something to reference to. But low-hanging fruit out of all of these controls would be the best way, I think, to try to remediate in the beginning. So starting with asset management, making sure we're doing vulnerability scans, right? Making sure that the systems are being patched on a regular basis. Data is protected, the basic 101 of information security that we need to address.
I just have one question on, since this is an area of improvement in terms of physical devices, I assume that includes cameras and visual.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
How obviously it needs improvement. Are we talking about more cameras? And just wondering how you balance like privacy issues with the number of cameras and where they are.
Right. So this is in, identifying our assets and having an asset management system and inventory in place, not just for physical assets, hardware, but also software, right? A defined set of software that is allowed to be used on university systems, university laptops, ensuring that they have the proper endpoint protection software on there and that they're also joined to the domain. But absolutely, they include cameras, right? Because they're a device that can definitely be exploited, and video conferencing devices as well. Multi-function devices. You're welcome.
Michael, you touched on low-hanging fruit. Would you consider baseline configuration deployments a low-hanging fruit?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The operating system's being built. There's no reason why we shouldn't be following best practices. Currently, right now, for NIST 800 171 compliance, we're doing that for the machines that are going to be used for that, and it should not take a lot of effort.
Yeah, addressing that one security control will really address many of the issues that were, covered. So,
right.
Robbie, it's Neil. Just one question. Michael, for want of a better term, enterprise software, do we have the vendor or vendors that we work with? To what extent does the risk work you do extend into their performance?
So we've partnered with purchasing to any time that there's a contract that's coming through, whether it be for SaaS services or a software platform that involves university data. We do our third-party due diligence by leveraging, something similar to a standards information gathering questionnaire in higher ed. It's through EDUCAUSE called the HECVAT. And we require vendors who are going to be bidding on these things to fill them out, and then they get reviewed.
If I could just kind of fill in a little detail on the inventory management piece of this, is over the last 6 months or so, we have made tremendous progress in this area. Both the Division of Finance and Administration and the Division of Student Affairs have done a top to bottom inventory of all endpoints within their respective divisions, and have done an absolutely tremendous job in starting the process of ensuring that all of those operating systems and systems are up to date. Some of these turn into larger projects, especially when we have systems that are controlling secondary devices like X-ray machines or HVAC systems or things of that nature. But we're making great progress on this front. Both divisions also have seen substantial increases in deployments of endpoint protection systems, antivirus systems, all the rest of them. Meanwhile, within central IT, we are building out a dashboard system that automatically checks for compliance and verifies that these critical pieces of software remain installed. And we are currently in the midst of attempting to purchase a new and updated system primarily for service management, but this system also has a very, very strong inventory management component to it. For those of you who are in this area, it's called ServiceNow. And so we're hopeful that we'll be able to make even more rapid strides in the coming 6 months, pending that software purchase, pending the completion of our own internal tools, et cetera, et cetera.
I would just say I applaud you for the honesty and transparency of the presentation. There's not an organization, company, or university when you shine the light on IT security that doesn't have holes. So the fact that you're laying them out for the board in a transparent way and then putting a plan together to address them is the right approach, and I thank you for that presentation.
Yeah, let me second that.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Michael. We're approaching the top of the hour, and we have one more discussion item and a major action item to discuss. So we'll move on to the next discussion item. Next discussion item is the National Science Foundation audit of established program to stimulate competitive research, Track 1 program, Closure 3D. I'll ask Michael Wood to present. Sorry, Michelle. Michelle Wood.
We're experiencing technical difficulties. This is where Zoom is not so good. Ooh. Bad connection in Fiji.
Good afternoon. I'm Michelle Wood. For those of you that do not know me, my Office of Sponsored and Cost Accounting is part of the Division of Finance and Administration. We report up to the Controller's Office. And part of our mission is to do the traditional financial functions for sponsored projects. Those include billing, cash collections, reporting, and also covers handling audits, reviews, and those kinds of activities. In addition to that, we also do the indirect cost rate calculation for the university. So that's kind of the overview of what we handle in our office. While we carry out those functions, we work very closely with the Division of Research and their Office of Sponsored Projects. If you have any questions after the end of this presentation, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, and I will get back to you with answers. So just to kind of put this in context, National Science Foundation supports the university and has supported the university in terms of a number of research awards on an annual basis. And for fiscal 21, we had approximately $20 million of research expenditures from NSF. And that comprises roughly 25% of total research and development expenditures as reported on our single audit report. So it's quite a large percentage when you look at all of the sponsors that the university has. NSF itself employs a variety of methods to monitor those expenditures and to assure that those expenditures are being incurred in accordance with the stated policies and procedures of NSF, the specific awards, and the institution. In this case, National Science Foundation, well, let me back up a step. National Science Foundation annually has a work plan that they publish. And in that work plan, they go through the main criteria that they are going to follow in areas that they think are important. And in 2018, one of the work plan agenda items was the review of Ebsco audits and, or Ebsco awards rather. And there's roughly 10 institutions across the country that have received Ebsco awards. So they went through and decided, based on a variety of criteria, which institutions and which awards they were going to look at in further detail. And the university was selected. So our audit began last September, and that audit was actually conducted through a firm that NSF contracts with to do the detailed testing. And that firm was Cotton and Company. So through the period from September until October of this year, we did a variety of testing. And that testing comprised of selecting over 75 transactions and looking at the transactions from a variety of different perspectives. Documentation.
Were transactions from 2013, I believe?
These are actually, that is a good point. These transactions actually covered the period from 2011 to 2020. So there was a large span of time in which these transactions took place. Where we are in terms of the audit itself is that they issued the preliminary report on the findings, which we'll go over in the following slides. But right now we are in the part of the process where we will be working to negotiate those findings with NSF. So while we've done a lot of work, we have yet to conclude the process. So we're very much in the beginning phases of really determining what the extent of the findings are. I already covered some of this. So URI was one of 3 universities selected for audit. Within the university, there were 4 awards that were selected for audit. Again, they covered that 10-year span of transactions. The total population were roughly $40 million of expenses and $8 million of cost share. Cost share expenditures are those that are incurred either by the university or by third parties in support of the stated scope of work for those awards.
What does expenditures mean?
Expenses.
Yeah, but expenses for the audit?
Those are expenses that were incurred on the NSF awards. So in this case,
Billed to the grant. In other words,
My hearing's getting bad. I can't hear you.
so when you draw down a grant, the way you do it is
Right.
you in effect present expenditures that
Right.
you've incurred.
Right.
And so activity on a grant is measured in terms of expenditures.
Right.
Okay, so when they're auditing it, they're comparing what you expended and does that agree with the purpose of the grant, the regulations covering how money is expended under the
So
grant.
are those
and so on.
expenditures for the 4 universities that were selected or just us?
us.
Just us?
And those expenditures are actually transactions. So it's payroll, fringe benefits, other transactions that were incurred in support of those Ebsco awards.
And what did you say our total awards were? Dollars-wise?
For NSF on an annual basis, it was roughly 20 million.
20 million, right?
So these awards, so going back to the beginning, these awards are these are high dollar awards to the university.
I was just trying to get the awards with
Yeah.
the expenditures. I couldn't.
Yes, so because the time frame was so long, and because these 4 awards, 2 of them total 20 million each.
Okay,
So that's the scope of it.
sorry, got it.
No, it's okay. I'm sorry. Thank you. So of that population, they selected roughly $2 million worth of transactions in a variety of sizes. So we had very small transactions that were selected, very large ones. This chart is a very high-level summary of the findings. At this point, again, we're going to be starting the negotiation phase in February, 2 weeks from now. Of the $628,000 of findings, we agree with 8,500. 268,000 of the findings had to do with cost sharing. And one of the complexities of this award is that cost sharing was provided by outside institutions. Because of the timing involved, one of the institutions did not retain adequate records, which resulted in the finding of that 268, roughly 200,000 relates to one institution.
I think to clarify there, simply their document destruction policy, which they had applied in a blanket way,
Yes.
did not conform with the NSF requirement for document retention. They just, mowed their documents down.
They had a change, they actually had a change in accounting. They had a change in accounting system in that 10-year period, which made it very difficult. On the positive side, URI overmatched the cost share. So in the audit report, the auditors state that should this finding not be met by the overmet match, then NSF should proceed with the finding. But we have overmet greater than this amount. The next item has to do with a sub-award where there's certain rules within NSF where you have to seek approval for certain actions. And in these findings, and I would say in the rest of the block here, these are subject to interpretation and there are gray areas. But in all of these cases, we feel that we have a very strong case and have documented that process or the documentation that we think supports our case in the report. But in terms of that item with the sub-award, NSF does have rules regarding approval. Over the course of the 10-year period, NSF has strengthened its language, but at the time that this was done, we feel that we have very strong, we feel like we have a strong case. 166,000 are question costs related to sub-awardees. So within the context of these awards, URI in turn sub-awarded or allocated some of the research to other institutions to carry out the work. And the auditors went to that level of detail in terms of testing. We reached out to the sub-awardees and got backup documentation. And so they are questioning some of those costs. And then the last item is they questioned our capitalization of some upgrades, and they're disallowing some of the indirect costs on those upgrades. Again, a gray area in terms of what we review and how we perceive the transaction. Based on our practices, we believe that that is a supportable cost. Does anybody have any questions?
Sounds like we're in good shape.
That, you know, since 2011, we've done over $200 million worth of NSF work.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
this is
$200 million, and they're citing these are negotiable and correctable. So
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
The next action item on the list is a review and recommendation that the URI Board of Trustees approves the full resolution set forth in enclosure 4A, to which the board, in summary, is approving the establishment and registration of a University of Rhode Island branch office in the Republic of Fiji, and the taking of all necessary and appropriate actions by the university president or his designees, including the submissions of all required applications, authorizations, and designations required by governmental agencies in the Republic of Fiji, to enable the establishment and registration of the branch office, and to undertake the performance and administration of USAID-funded Pacific Islands Fisheries Project known as Our Fish, Our Future, under the leadership and direction of URI's Coastal Resources Center. For this action item, I'll have Dr. J.P. Walsh present.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hope you can see that okay. So today I'm going to give a quick overview presentation. This PowerPoint is part of the enclosure, as well as the resolution, which is an assigned memo from the president, as well as a memo that I sent to the president about the request. We are requesting the opening of a branch office in the Republic of Fiji in support of this project. As just outlined, I'm here with my colleagues, Elin Terrell and Jennifer Critcher, who are in the room. So for those of you that aren't aware, the Coastal Resources Center is a unique entity within the Graduate School of Oceanography. We basically bring science to coastal issues locally and globally. We have an annual budget on the order of $10 million from grant funding, and we have about over 20 staff and are, as I mentioned, active locally and globally. CRC's work focuses on seafood, coastal resilience, dealing with storms and sea level rise, as well as planning for our coasts and oceans. We have many ongoing projects in the United States related to, for example, the blue economy, resilience, and seafood aspects. We also, as I mentioned, are doing a lot of work internationally. We had two recent projects, one in Senegal and Ghana that ended, and are currently running a project known as the Fish Right Program in the Philippines, and have this new award from USAID. I'm going to quickly mention the USAID Fish Right Program in the Philippines because this is a program that went through a similar process of registration. This is a $28 million 6-year project focused on fisheries. In order to have our offices, we have a primary office in Manila and a couple satellite offices, as well as a number of staff that we're working with. In order to establish this program, we had to go through this process of registration, which is what we're pursuing here with the new USAID Our Fish, Our Future program in the Pacific Islands. This project is also focused on sustainable coastal fisheries. It's a $15 million 5-year project generating almost $2 million in overhead for URI. We are requesting an office in Fiji, and that's because the work is operating in 6 island nations that are listed on that slide. Just a quick overview of the program. USAID really requires our presence in the region for the scale of this effort. And they specifically requested a Fiji central office. In order to operate locally in Fiji, we do, for example, to open a commercial bank account, hire employees, lease space, we need to register. And the process, as I mentioned, is going to be similar to what was conducted for the Fish Right office in the Philippines, but perhaps actually a little bit easier because of some of the steps. Basically, this will be an extension of URI in the Republic of Fiji. In the PowerPoint that again is in the enclosure, has 5 steps, and I think following me is going to be some legal experts that will be giving some more guidance. So I won't, these are just here, there's 5 of them. I won't go through them. I think they'll be addressing those. But before you is the resolution. And I just want to highlight that in addition to URI's legal counsel that we've worked with closely, we also have another attorney, which I think will be presenting shortly. And we also will be working with a local attorney. So I will stop there, and I wanted to hand it over, I believe, to Peter Harrington, who will be speaking next.
Thank you, JP. I'm not going to say anything more than this. I want to introduce Vinita Mehra, who is a partner in the law firm of Brown Ritter and Kegler, Brown and Ritter in Columbus, Ohio. Vinita is very well known to the higher ed law community. She's been working in this area of international projects and programs on behalf of Ohio State University and many other colleges and universities. She was referred to us when we first encountered the needs of the Philippines project that JP mentioned. So I want to introduce her. Our team locally here, Alyssa Boss, our general counsel, and myself and Carol Connolly, who's a new attorney in our office, who works in the research area, have been really on top of this, working with a great team at CRC, which includes Elin and Jennifer here. And it's been a pleasure working with them. And so anyway, our team is working with Vinita, and we also have local counsel in Fiji, because there are a lot of moving parts, and you do need local counsel plus the expert counsel. So, so without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Vinita to give a very quick overview of the legal issues involved and the risks.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate that introduction. Good afternoon to each one of you all, and thank you for having me here today. I'm just going to piggyback on what Mr. Walsh was saying in terms of a branch office structure. As Mr. Walsh mentioned, a branch office is considered a direct extension of a parent company. It is not a separate legal entity from the parent, which means that it has the same governance, has the same members, office holders, directors, and trustees, and also uses the same name. From a risk perspective, when you look at a branch office structure, in essence, the parent company owns 100% of the liability of the branch office, leading to exposing its overseas assets to fulfill any local liabilities. And that actually depends upon what those liabilities are. When we look at the context of a parent company direct exposure to liability as a result of a branch office structure, it can fall likely into these following buckets, such as employment claims by employees who are going to be hired and engaged in Fiji through the branch, and or non-compliance of any applicable labor laws, for example, improper payroll withholding or misclassification of contractors or, non-payment of statutory benefits. That's one bucket that could likely be a liability for URI. The second bucket could be third-party contractual and or tort claims, breach of contract claims by service providers and so on. Another bucket of liability could be regulatory fines and fees for non-compliance if reporting is not done on a timely fashion, or improper financial statements are filed and so on. And lastly, from a tax perspective, there could be a tax liability only in the event if a branch office tax activities that they're undertaking will be considered to be a taxable activity in Fiji. So there's a tax liability potential risk, if in the event that's considered taxable activity. Obviously, there are tools to mitigate some of this risk, such as obtain insurance to cover all aspects of the branch office operations. That insurance could be not limited to general liability, employer liability, commercial property liability, engage third-party service providers for payroll services, HR compliance, and a legal and accounting firm, to make sure that the regular annual regulatory and tax filings are done on a timely fashion. Continue to work with the great team that Mr. Walsh is leading, who are well versed with culture, processes, local and business practice of undertaking US aid grant operations in Fiji. And then lastly, from a tax perspective, because that's always the big liability that to be concerned about, the branch can consider to obtain what we call a tax exempt status in Fiji, and or obtain an advance ruling from the Fiji Revenue and Custom to Tax Authority on whether the branch office grant-based operations will be considered as a taxable activity. Even though URI is a tax exempt in the US, that tax exemption does not translate into or activities and operations in Fiji. So that could be one way of mitigating any unforeseen tax liability risk. But again, a very high overview of the branch office structure and what it means from a risk perspective. Happy to answer any questions.
Standpoint, our umbrella policy at the university covers this group in Fiji, or any risk issues?
So, and I'll have Peter answer that question, but just from my perspective, taking the example of what we did in Philippines, because we have a similar structure in Philippines, there is an umbrella policy, but there has been an additional country-specific endorsement to that policy.
Okay.
So we similarly for Fiji, and I believe Peter and his team and others are also working. Jennifer's working on this. We're looking at getting a country-specific foreign commercial policy, which then within that foreign commercial policy will cover a wide variety of insurance claims, such as I mentioned, general liability, employer liability, commercial property. So there is definitely, I would say, a wish list of insurances that need to be obtained, which would be but country-specific in terms of the claims that arise in Fiji against URI. Peter, please feel free to add.
Yeah, thanks, Vinita. Tom, I think the other, the biggest perceived risk is around employment laws, to make sure that you don't, violate payroll or employment laws of the country. The model we used in Philippines, which we'll use again here, we're going to have a company that is a employment law specialist compliance firm that will, make sure that we're doing things in accordance with the applicable laws in Fiji. That's a real comfort to everybody, and I think a real risk mitigation step. Insurance, as Vinita mentioned, and so I think we had a good experience in the Philippines. There's been many projects in other countries. They've been well managed, and I don't think there's any greater risk in this one than in the ones they've been successful on before. Someone could always slip and fall and sue the university there, as they could here, and we just will deal with it,
Just going to be hard for me to approve it without an on-site visit.
Carol and I are going to beat you there. We already have a golf trip planned.
It should also be noted.
Broker on the procuring insurance.
It should also be noted that this item was also being presented as a discussion item at the Academic Affairs and Research Committee.
That's right. Can I just ask one quick question? How many branch operations are we currently managing? Do we have a count on that?
Well, I think one, yeah, because our Ghana has ended. Jennifer, am I missing any?
No, that's correct. Currently, it's one.
One. Okay. Thank you.
Robbie, Tyndall Judas, just also, all of the expenses and everything involved in this are bound by the grant and borne by the grant, correct? There's no additional burden or financial obligation to the university or the state outside the grant.
I think I would say correct. I think the on the cost for the expert legal counsel, the university was covering those costs, but yes, all the registration process and the operation costs are all covered by the grant.
And when the grant sunsets, they all sunset and go away. There's no further obligation beyond that.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
I think it's fantastic.
Excellent. May I have a motion that the URI Board of Trustees approves the full resolution set forth in Closure 4A, through which the board, in summary, is approving the establishment and registration of the University of Rhode Island branch office in the Republic of Fiji, and taking all of the necessary and appropriate actions by the university president or his designees, including the submission of all required applications, authorizations, and designations required by governmental agencies in the Republic of Fiji, to enable the establishment and registration of the branch office and to undertake the performance and administration of the USAID-funded Pacific Islands project known as Our Fish, Our Future, under the leadership and direction of URI's Coastal Resources Center.
I'm Ryan, I move it.
Second, Neil Kerwin.
Any discussion on the motion? There being no discussion, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved. Final item on today's agenda is item 5, to adjourn. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Moved. Second.
I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. I'll say that under my watch, stop the process is the first time we go over my allotted time. But thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
The next URI Board of Trustees Institutional Risk and